Jeremy Corbyn would have made a better Prime Minister than Boris Johnson. That's what Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer said during last night's Question Time debate.
And the question of what Sir Keir Starmer thinks of Jeremy Corbyn keeps cropping up and seems to make him very uncomfortable. Because, of course, back in 2019, he said Jeremy Corbyn would be a great Prime Minister and has since set about changing the party and remove himself from connections with that period. Now, Deputy Labour leader Angela Rayner joins us now. Why does all this make Sir Keir Starmer so uncomfortable? He said, look, I've campaigned with him. You know, I wanted the Labour leader to be successful. I thought he'd make a better Prime Minister than Boris Johnson, which I guess isn't surprising because he would much rather have a Labour Prime Minister than a Conservative Prime Minister. And yet, he feels very uncomfortable every time Jeremy Corbyn comes up because it looks like he said something fake.
Well, look, I mean, I think the 2019 general election result, we got hammered by the electorate. I'm not going to put it any plainer than that. And, you know, we saw the devastation after that when Boris Johnson was elected. And I think some of the feedback I got was that Labour didn't offer an alternative. And actually, you know, that period of time was not good for Labour. We didn't get elected.
That's true, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that's the critical point, isn't it? Because at the time, he was there publicly stating, in the run-up to that election, Jeremy Corbyn will be a great Prime Minister. Then it loses, and suddenly he has a very different story. That is the nub of the trust problem over this question, which keeps dogging the Labour leader despite the polls.
Well, Keir was very clear that we were fighting for a Labour government, as was I at the time. And I think that we all saw what happened after 2019 and what happened when Boris Johnson became Prime Minister. The parties, you know, the unlawful behaviour, the sleaze, the scandal, the chaos as Liz Truss crashed our economy. We all feel a lot of guilt over the fact that we didn't put a programme forward that the electorate would vote for. And I think that's why Keir feels uncomfortable, is that we've changed the Labour Party since then because we need a Labour Party that's going to serve the British people, because we've seen what happens when we had the Tory chaos, and we take some responsibility for that because we lost the election. So
what
you know, I think it's important that we put forward.
Because you're on record as saying that you were absolutely gutted when you heard he'd been suspended.
Well, since then, we've seen that Jeremy Corbyn hasn't really acted in a way that would have been, in keeping with the Labour Party. He's now standing against the Labour Party, so therefore, you know, he's not a member of the Labour Party anymore.
Sorry, Angela, just to clarify, what has he done that's not in keeping with the Labour Party?
Well, he's standing against the Labour Party, and he's criticised the Labour Party as we've come forward to put a programme, what we believe is a programme for government which is fiscally responsible and can change working people's lives.
Hang on a minute, Angela Rayner, you're smarter than this. You suspended him, so clearly he's going to be critical of being suspended by the party he's been a member of for most of his life. And also, are you saying that anybody within your party that criticises the party, criticises the policy, has an opinion, is no longer part of the party?
Well, no, we have our debates and we have our processes of how we get to policy decisions. But we had a national policy forum. We've had our programme. We've put our manifesto forward. That is a credible manifesto that's fully costed and fully funded that we think will change Britain for the better.
One of the early things that Keir Starmer talked about was unifying the party, bringing everyone together. You're sidelining Jeremy Corbyn, and whatever you think of him, he has a lot of support, still has a tremendous amount of support, likely to win his seat again. You've ousted people like Faiza Shaheen, and there's uproar about Faiza Shaheen as well, and if people see that's unfair. The signs are that you're not actually unifying the party, that you are creating almost two different parties.
Well, no, that's not true, and I'll tackle those issues straight on, and that's that we've had a vetting process now that, you know, says that we have a high standard for our candidates that come forward. We've seen even in the last couple of days what happens when you have poor candidates in the Conservatives, and Keir takes direct action where people fall below those standards, as our NEC does. So we make no apologies for putting forward a robust vetting system that means that we don't accept that type of behaviour. We've withdrawn one candidate in this election in Scotland for their behaviour that we think is unacceptable. We take direct action because we're in the service of the British people. The Conservatives have failed to do that. And Keir has changed the Labour Party and says that those type of behaviours will not be acceptable in the Labour Party. And we, I fully endorse that.
OK, let's move along, because I know we're really going to be short of time here. Let's dig into some of the policy, but actually a particular line about policy, actually. We've got a thing called the People's Panel here at Good Morning Britain, where we're speaking to voters. And it gives us a really interesting insight on what they really think about the current leaders and the parties. Just have a listen to this. This is Tia, who sits on our People's Panel. She's a voter out there and represents lots of other voters across the country.
You know, when you face palm and you're just disappointed, you're like, here we go again. That's how it felt, honestly. Ed Davey and Keir Starmer, a lot of, like, the question that was running through my mind constantly was, how are you going to do this? How are you going to do this? And it's like, you've had so long running up to this moment. You've even had years running up to this moment, and you still can't even just back up your point.
So let's take one of those points that Sir Keir Starmer made last night. He said he's going to stop the landlords making renters outbid each other. But there was no explanation of how he was going to do that, because private landlords can do what they like to get people into their homes, can't they?
Well, first of all, we'll strengthen renters reform. We've said that we're bringing the Law Commission recommendations on leaseholds as well. So we're going to protect leaseholders and renters. We will make sure that renters can go to tribunal and recover all costs. So we will crack down on those landlords that think they can do that. We will also have a cap on the amount of money that they can ask for in deposits that's reasonable. We'll consult on that to make sure that people can't be told that they have to give 6-12 months upfront rent, which means that most people then can't get into the rented accommodation. And we've got to crack down on some of these unscrupulous landlords who are abusing people.
How would that work then, Angela? So somebody owns a bungalow that they want to rent out, and they get an offer from someone of one amount, and then they get an offer from someone else for an amount to rent per month. And they think, well, actually, I better check with that first person I was going to rent it to. Listen and say, I've got a better offer over here. And they go, I'll match it. And you're saying that you're going to make it possible for the person that doesn't get it to go to court? How would that work? How would you even know that was happening? It's that kind of detail that makes people think, what does this mean?
Well, yeah, because what we'll do is make it more transparent. If they end up in a bidding war, then obviously they will know that they're in a bidding war. If somebody puts on the market, if somebody advertises on the market that their property is, say, £1,000 per month, and somebody says, I've got £1,000 per month here, I want to rent your property, and then they say, oh, now it's £1,050 a month, and then they say, now it's a £1,150 a month. That's pretty clear that that's a bidding war. And that's unfair when originally it was put forward as £1,000 a month. I think it's pretty clear you can see that.
Angela Rayner, isn't that how business works?
Houses and everything.
Isn't that how business works? I mean, if I was a landlord, I'd put it on there to try and attract attention, first of all. And if 3 or 4 people want it, isn't it my right to give it to the person who's paying more?
That's not how it's not an auction. That's not how the current system...
I've got to make money.
That's not how the current system works.
When you sell your house, you don't get the highest bidder. When you sell clothes on a market stall, you don't get the highest bidder.
Well, Kate,
I'm not saying your principle isn't worthy, because there's renters, and we all know them personally, that are desperate for something like this. But it just feels a bit strangely dreamlike.
Well, I don't think that, Kate. I think that selling your house and buying something on, eBay or whatever else is slightly different to rent. People put forward a property at the rental market that they think is the money that they need for that property. They don't do it on the basis of we'll start a bidding war. That's never been our rental system. This has happened in a number of cases now where, because we've not fixed the supply problem in the housing market, we've now got people having to bid, which is a new endemic in parts of our country, and we want to stop it.
All right. Angela Rayner, I believe we are out of time. Thank you very much for joining us this morning, Deputy Leader of the Labour Party.